US President Donald Trump could abandon Ukraine negotiations. Trump's administration is getting angry at Europeans over their position on supporting Ukraine's sovereignty. Meanwhile, US could deploy private contractors to Ukraine. Why does Trump consider abandoning ceasefire talks, and could he commit to European security? According to Axios, senior officials in Trump's team are privately expressing sharp frustration with European allies, accusing them of obstructing efforts to bring a negotiating end to the war in Ukraine, despite publicly supporting effort. The allegations reflect a growing rift between US and European allies over how best to end the war in Ukraine, which has killed hundreds of thousands and destabilized the region. US officials believe that some European leaders are projecting support for Trump's effort while simultaneously sabotaging progress behind closed doors. According to White House officials, the post-summit momentum following high-stakes talks in Alaska between Trump and Putin has stalled. While the talks were initially hailed as a breakthrough, progress toward a final agreement have to be stagnated. Frustrated US officials say European leaders, not Moscow or Kyiv, are primarily to blame. Quote, "The Europeans don't get to prolong this war and backdoor unreasonable expectations, while also expecting America to bear the cost. If Europe wants to escalate the war, that will be up to them, but they will be hopelessly snatching defeat from the jaws of victory." In a significant escalation of pressure, administration has asked the Treasury Department to draw up a list of potential sanctions Europe could adopt. Among the proposed measures, complete halt to oil and gas from Russia, secondary sanctions against India and China. Also, members of Trump's foreign policy team are increasingly skeptical that Europe or even Ukraine is acting in good faith to reach a compromise. Quote, "If there isn't flexibility from all sides, we're going to sit back and watch. Let them fight it out for a while and see what happens." Privately, US officials argue that European governments are pushing Ukraine to hold out for unrealistic terms, including full territorial restitution, security guarantees, and reparations from Russia. Trump's advisor describes this as a maximalist approach that could doom negotiations. One source familiar with the matter said, quote, "Getting to a deal is an art of the possible. We are not going to get everything we want. Neither is Ukraine, but Europe keeps pretending otherwise." According to the diplomatic sources, European leaders were surprised by the US accusations and criticism. Several EU officials said they were not aware Washington had such a negative reading of European position and European intentions. One European diplomat told CNN, "We have always supported a just peace. That doesn't mean caving to Russian terms. We are all surprised. The US is suggesting we are undermining this effort." Despite the tensions, communication line remain open between all allies. Meanwhile, according to The Telegraph, President Trump is exploring a plan to send American private military contractors to Ukraine as a part of security guarantees package. Trump is engaged in conversations with Europeans about deploying private forces instead of US troops on the ground. The move would allow US to support Ukraine's defense while without violating Trump's opposition to sending American boots on the ground. According to the publication, Trump's proposal is a part of a wider framework being developed by NATO countries and the Coalition of the Willing. The plan is intended to provide long-term security guarantees to Ukraine while encouraging Kremlin to accept a ceasefire. Under the plan, US-based private military companies would be tasked with building defense fortifications, constructing bases, and protecting American economic and diplomatic interests in Ukraine. Sources involved in the matter say the presence of American personnel would serve as a deterrent to Russian forces by raising the stakes of any renewed military offensive. Trump's team reportedly views this as a compromise solution that maintains a strong US footprint without placing active duty troops. It also aligns with political demands from Trump's voter base and many Republicans who remain skeptical of large-scale military commitments abroad. According to The Telegraph and corroborated by the European sources, these components include several options.
And we work very hard, and we've worked very hard during the past few years to have a peace which is a robust and long-standing peace. This is why the idea of a trilateral meeting is very important, because this is the only way to fix it.
The demilitarized buffer zone between Ukrainian and Russian lines would be monitored by international peacekeepers. Ukraine is reportedly pressing for the zone to be secured by European troops, while Russia has floated the idea of involving Chinese forces. Also, this includes the European Reassurance Force to involve deploying thousands of European troops in rare areas of Ukraine, far from the front lines. As a third layer of defense, the original proposed call for a force of up to 30,000 personnel, but current planning may involve a smaller footprint due to concerns about cost, logistics, and risk of provoking Moscow. Moreover, Western air forces would gradually reintroduce fighter jets and air defense systems into Ukrainian airspace. The operation would begin in western Ukraine, particularly near cities like Lviv, and gradually expand eastward as conditions stabilize. A separate maritime component would focus on securing shipping lanes in the Black Sea. This mission would likely to be led by Turkey in coordination with Romania and Bulgaria. European NATO members, including the UK and France, are expected to expand their existing military training missions for Ukraine. Problems like Operation Interflex, currently hosted in the UK, could be relocated to the west of Ukraine to accelerate Ukraine's rearmament and reconstruction. All of these efforts would be coordinated under the coalition of the willing framework, which would operate outside of formal NATO structures. While Trump is unwilling to commit US troops on the ground in Ukraine, his administration is expected to offer substantial form in the support of logistic military hardware and intelligence. US aircraft and supply chains would be used to move military assets to Ukraine. In addition, Europe has already pledged to at least $10 billion to purchase the US-made defense systems, with the possibility of expanding to $90 billion in the future. One of Washington's most vital roles would be providing intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance capabilities, real-time satellite data, signal interceptions, and drone coverage. These assets would be indispensable in supporting European-led coalition. Also, US is reportedly considering placing General Alexis Grinkevich, the current Supreme Allied Commander Europe, in charge of the multinational effort. Such move would give Washington command authority without a formal deployment and could provide additional credibility to the mission. Trump's inclination toward using private contractors echoed his foreign policy decision during the first term, when he often relied on unconventional military tours. According to diplomatic insiders, this proposal has gained momentum following Trump's recent talks with Russian dictator Vladimir Putin in Alaska, where two leaders discussed the potential conditions for a ceasefire. While details of this conversation remain unclear, they appear to have accelerated Western planning for peace enforcement mechanisms. In the meantime, President Zelensky will meet European leaders in Paris for security talks. President Zelensky is set to join key European leaders in Paris on September 4th for a high-stakes summit to discuss security guarantees. Summit will be hosted by French President Emmanuel Macron and also include UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. According to Financial Times, talks will focus on European-led plan to deploy troops to Ukraine, security guarantees modeled on NATO's Article 5, post-war military training, peacekeeping, and reconstruction. Also, continued US support through intelligence, logistics, and command control would be important. Von der Leyen confirmed Europe has developed precise plans to deploy troops and will leverage a new €150 billion defense fund to support Ukraine. While the US wants and soldiers, sources say DC and Washington may back the mission through private contractors. The summit is expected to produce a draft framework for future troop deployments and coordination among Ukraine, allies, and Western backers. That's all for today. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, and glory to Ukraine!